Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly, and just like the Banshee video, I think we're going to do a bit of a part 2 from my previous video. No, not that one, though I could rag on Destiny and Bungie for most of the day with most of my issues that I don't even talk about because I pay too much attention to this game, but then I sit back and happily slaughter things with a shotgun, so... Wait, no, was that Doom? Probably both. Before we do get going, I would like to highlight a very awesome Reddit post that was done on our Destiny lore. Though I've figured at least most of this out on my own, I am not going to say this didn't help to keep everything organized, considering I'm a bit behind with my own writings at this point. Anyway, if you'd rather read over some stuff and not really watch a video for finding these connections, then I'll leave that in the pinned comment below. After the last video about Bastion and its relations to the Stranger and some other pieces, I started getting comments about "give up on the Stranger, Bungie has," and "I don't understand why the Stranger has anything to do with the coffin," or "isn't there something more interesting to talk about than the Exo Stranger?" Well, you're not wrong on all of these points realistically. I mean, the Stranger has nothing to do directly with the elements of the coffin. The Stranger has nothing to do directly with the additional time points that we have seen and dealt with. She has nothing to do with the Vex per this point, or really anything else that we could talk about. But just to highlight it again, it's her impact on the events of today that matter the most. The moment that we returned to the Black Garden was the moment that her story became very real again, and at least needed to be revisited to some degree. She was the reason we even went into the Black Garden in the first place, after all. Things are working in a circle of sorts. I mean, in some realities, the moment we saw the lore from the Unveiling book and the Flower game, that was another point in time that it also relates back to what the Stranger was looking for and how she stepped through time, or at least from my interpretations of it all. But let me explain what I mean by some of these extra points. Last time, I really wanted to highlight that the passage of Bastion and other weapons in time to our Guardian means the same as when the Stranger handed us her rifle at the end of the Black Garden campaign. Perfect Paradox, No Time to Explain, and others fit this bill as well, and with the other Season of Dawn weapons we have to earn from the Obelisk, the same is also true. I am really thrilled to see this line consistent within the storyline, as the more it happens, the more we can validate this intention. But then, what's the point of it? Why continue to highlight it at all? Why bring it up constantly? This falls back on something else the Stranger had to do early on in her relations with us, and as a refresher, I figured we'd actually look into the cards on the Stranger a little bit more. I do find them extremely important to later points that we will make as well, so forgive the rehash, but know that this is for a good reason. Record 084, Bridge 10.7. Right when this time, wrong where, the world so big on the horizon, wasn't expecting it. As it happens, something's here that's not supposed to be, other than myself, will return. Record 092, Bridge 08.1. Configuration worked, mostly. Arrived under the service, surrounded, too slow to return, barely fought to a vantage point. Yes, there is dark evil here, and not the one we chase. Suggest no other attempt without more care. Record 120, Bridge 05.3. They are feral on the surface, but their intent is complex behind the teeth and claws. More is shared with the machines than common enemies alone. Record 142, Bridge 07.4. An unexpected extraction. These Guardians stopped some dark ritual before I could reach it, tearing the light away. Like the Garden, too similar to go uncharted. Record 142, Bridge 08.1. This attempt was precise, landed meters and minutes from prior ritual, confirmed the extraction was extinguished. The little light mentioned Venus. We may have another. Record 167, Bridge 5.2. Successfully observed Guardian discovery of Hive on Luna. No evidence today of knowledge past Vex breaches here. Delay in return command is a liability to solve before engaging this close again. Record 312, Bridge 3.3. Watching Guardian Hive engagements confirms a trajectory toward Earth. This moon is theirs, a breeding ground, their black heart perhaps. Different from what we know, but seems to be that same dark end I see us fall to over and over. Record 472, Bridge 2.1. I followed this light as far back as it goes. Let the little one guide me through Fallen as I puzzle out what the hive want in the bones of this broken cosmodrome. Record 473, Bridge 1.2. Back to the temple again, but this time the little one knows I'm here. I have seen the failures of so many, but none have been as interesting. Preparing to engage. Now, this was the most important of the 3 or 4 cards I'd like to highlight. I say 3 or 4 mostly because the one about who she is, well, that's kind of cheating, but it does showcase the stranger is in and out of our world line, our dimension, our timeline, fairly often. This seems to be a point in time she's able to track with consistency. Within the first Exo Stranger fragment, we see that she returns to a singular point in time and looks out over the horizon. Could be what that first line is talking about within the card we just got done reading about the world being so big on the horizon, but that's speculatory, of course. Within her first grimoire card, she seems to see her name among the list of the dead. Again, she is traveling world lines or different dimensions or offshoots of our own time. All of these are possible. Then there's the other 2 that are semi-important to highlight, with the Rasputin 4 grimoire card asking the stranger, or possibly the stranger, to step through time. Rasputin is curious how she does it. Granted, I am letting my bias rule this card a bit. The line of, you stand here now and now and now many times, and here I am a wonder, all a wonder, how you manage it, rings similar to that of a line with the first Exo Stranger card. I stand here now and now and now many times, this view, this ground. It's a hard comparison to not make and an inference that could mean much more for us down the line. But the last card that showcases time passage and showcases the idea of hopping from point to point. No time to explain. The weapon I was, well, expecting somewhat that the corridors of time was going to deliver to us, but I suppose all the hints suggest it really wouldn't have. I'll leave the card up for you to read over if you'd like. I've personally done so a lot of times already. It still is one of the most interesting and poignant pieces of timeline jumping to me. All the proof I may need. Though I find it funny that No Time to Explain is able to exist in our time as it is, and then in other forms besides, still seemingly altering or moving through positions and points in time, where we have to anchor another timepiece through the obelisk as we would here in Season of Dawn. Well, just a side note of a rambling idiot. So how about the connection? Why did I bring up the Unveiling book early on? Well, I know several have talked about it already and I'm a bit behind, but the entry entitled The Flower Game is extremely important to a lot of the time travel aspects that we're dealing with here. Finding the right path and exploring the right timeline. That's what all of this is about. In addition, The Flower Game is all about a game. John Conway's Game of Life, no, not that one by Milton Bradley, is what The Flower Game is all about. There are many different ways to have the game progress, but there are many different ways to let it die. I mean, so goes the game of life, right? There are ways to allow population pieces and civilizations to explode, and others to watch them tumble. What causes that tumbling population? Well, that's caused by something. An outside force, generally. Maybe a plague or a drought, a meteor. Whatever it could be, extinction-level events of all kinds fight against life. Life itself is, after all, a rather fragile thing, and if you don't follow the rules for it, then it distinguishes. If you don't follow exactly how that life is respected and built, then it dies. The game of life itself shows how easy it is to see life fall apart if you don't follow all the rules, and suddenly you're left with 1 or 2 pieces of life, or maybe nothing at all. But keep this in mind with the stranger and what we talked about before with her searching through for the proper timeline or world line. Think about how she tries to find the right pattern, the best chance at life. Of course, the rules of the game of life are the exact same as the Flower Game, just as they are the same as the shapes and figures we see within Destiny's lore. For instance, in the entry Tyrannicide 1 of the Awoken of the Reef book, Marasov talks about the bomb logic, an exploder of sorts. Then there is the shapes and gliders that Mara speaks of in the same entry. This, along with the additional idea of a cellular automata game being played out within Mara's dream that she has within this entry, just flows along with the game very well. A game of cellular automata is the game of life by Conway, after all. But think back on other pieces of the game, so to speak. The Emissary has done so.
What does it want?
How?
Like you.
No one's like him.
We don't understand.
He has agency like you wouldn't believe. He can leave this place.
This plane. We can leave this plane.
Think bigger. He can leave this game.
We don't understand.
Then I'm afraid it's impossible to explain.
The Drifter has done so. The Skull of Dire Ahamkara has said so. The Nine have commented on it but do not understand it. And some pieces see the game and know the rules, but to comprehend it is something I'm not entirely to the point of understanding myself. I mean, it could just be the answer to the age-old question. Why? There's also the map that we seem to have from Corridors of Time, which, thanks to Mr. NieR on Twitter for doing the legwork on the map and compiling it. Pretty awesome work to have a visual reference, and it really does help, I think, the general idea of this theory and everything else along. There is a clear boundary that this automata followed, though it could project outward for all we know if allowed to continue with other traversal through time. If it does end, however, then don't forget about the old hand cannon from Curse of Osiris, the DFA. I know, a lot mentioned, it just stands for Death from Above, but within computational theory, it can also be short for Deterministic Finite Automata. And since we don't have an hour and a half to talk about this, here's the short version, and as best as I can generally sum it up. Imagine 3 circles. One circle leads to the other, then leads to another, then leads to another, possibly. The graph shown here deals with 2 values, but can produce 3 circles or states. You have a starting point. From the starting point or state 0, you have to change or move something and add a value of 1. This is now state 1. Then maybe you add a 0. This is now state 2. Perhaps you add the 1 value again. Well, now you're going backwards and possibly just presuming the same exact variable you just tested. This would involve a finite amount of patterns and pieces that we can see, but that's because we have a finite amount of sources within this example. Not too dissimilar from what we did with the pattern within the Corridors of Time and the puzzle that it held with all the 6 or 7 different pieces that we had and the symbols that we saw. Let's look at the values of DFA real quick. Keep in mind that this is also dealing with the Cabal. There are 4 members within this squad. We have 4 values. One value or member of this squad is reporting on the events within the Infinite Forest as the Vex play out the simulation. The pieces that change are a Gladiator, a Colossus, and a Scion. These 4 are destined to play out the scenario as the Vex test different possibilities with each mix and outcome. But the piece that moves all the time? The Guardians. We keep mobile in every scenario. That's very important as we go along. But just like the game of life by Conway for us, it's just a game to the Vex. Or at least it could be, depending who you are and how you accept these pieces, I suppose. Any game is a pattern or rule of code. It follows and sits within a set variable, but this idea isn't limited to just a game. It could be any manner of test ran in a computational science setting. Or I'm just being too thoughtful on it. The game is the entire idea. Even if it's a figurative game, it's still something which has rules, a constant back and forth of powers and energy of life and death, values and states. And so long as the rules are followed, the game can continue. That is, until the rules are broken, or perhaps new ones are made to circumvent the only rules that worked within the game. Something steps outside of the boundaries that the game puts in place. Yeah, as we learn to step, just like the stranger did, trying to find the timeline, system, and state that worked enough to give us, humanity, a chance to know which system and time she could trust with her real or possible future. And all of these elements combined, along with how we continue to break through the cycle and allow paracausality to take over a bit more within ourselves, allowing our light to grow. I don't know. To me, it just makes a bit of sense. We see a point in time where we failed here with this coffin, just as the stranger did. We're tapping into the same things she may have been able to, but per usual, that's all conjecture. And as a truly terrifying thought, I would hate to see the grimdark timeline that she truly comes from if ours is a successful one. Then again, might be more loot to get. We could carry on with a lot of the other links that exist with the lore over the years. These are not the only ones. Again, check out the Reddit post I have in that pinned comment for more. In fact, if you know of any others, then share them with us below. I'd like to see how much of this has you paying attention. To me, it's a very, very important tale that Destiny is trying to tell as we go through time and space. If you'd like to be part of further conversations in the future, you know the buttons to press, along with the others to tell me what you thought of this piece. I'm very curious any and all of your thoughts on my out there thinking, since I know this one definitely is a little out there. I hope I connected with you on this piece and that I did enough to explain my rationale. If not, just let me know below, and I'll do my best to fill you in. To all of you, no matter when or where you are, learn to step, and I'll see you next space time. Take care.